Jared? Okay. Jared, I just sent you a request to be a co-host.
Hey, Debbie.
Hey, turn your, I was about to tell you, this is kind of the first inaugural one that we have, but anytime you want to be on here, I would love for you to be on here.
Yeah, I'll come on as often as I can.
Well, you can do it anytime, every Monday if you want to.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when Stan first mentioned it. I said, yeah, that'd be good because we have the Thursday night spaces, and I thought Monday spaces, and we
It
have.
could be the Debbie and Jared show.
Well,
On
you know
Monday.
what? I thought about John Fredericks and I a long time ago. Thought that you would have a great show called Sweet Tea with Debbie Dooley,
I love
and
that.
I thought it played off of the Tea Party, and but I thought I was just thinking about that, and
Yeah,
John
that's
Fredericks was.
what we can start. But don't you want to be on Mondays?
Yeah,
And sweet tea with Debbie Dooley and Jared Craig.
yeah, that might work.
How about Stan? You hear it? How do you like that?
Oh, he doesn't have a microphone.
I think I just sent him one.
Okay.
Let me see. Invite to speak. But okay, we can get this started and get the conversation. But I think you and I make a great team, and it would interest people, and you can come at things from a legal perspective.
Yeah, and I've been on the spot with the Fani Willis mess,
Yep.
and
Okay. Let's get
so
started.
all right.
Let me see. It says invite to speak. I keep sending him a microphone. Let me just see. Invite to co-host. That'd be easier till we can. Yeah.
All right, and have you hit? It's recording. Okay.
Yep. And hey, everyone. Sorry, this is the inaugural kickoff of every Monday night Twitter Spaces at 7 o'clock. Jared Craig and I will be co-hosting and give you the latest up to date. Please share this with all your friends, or you can listen to it later. I have been involved with Veterans for America First for a couple of years. It's a great group, and I am the press secretary for Georgia Veterans for America First. Jared, do you want to give them your title?
Yes, I'm the Georgia State Chapter President of Veterans for America First, and I'm the National Vice President. But first off, I'm not a veteran myself, but I'm an advocate for veterans. I've been advocating for veterans in my private practice as an attorney in the individual side. And when I ran for Congress in 2022, I saw a lot more of what the veterans are up against to get just basic treatment. So I've been involved with Veterans for America First for a couple of years now, And we actually met as part of one of my first things with Veterans for America First, which was the bus tour in
Yep.
2022, where we went up the East Coast and found a whole bunch of conservatives where we weren't supposed to find them, up in New England and Connecticut, even all the way up into New Hampshire.
And
So,
Vermont and Pennsylvania. I mean, on
oh
that
yeah,
tour, it took us Virginia. It was the John Fredericks bus tour. This full disclaimer, I am not a veteran. My dad was an Air Force veteran. He was very proud of that. I'm a veterans advocate, and we advocate for America First policy issues. And I am a strong advocate of the grassroots and conservative policy. I have supported Donald Trump since 2015 and have been fighting for him ever since. And I'm a strong advocate for veterans, but America First issues and policies benefit veterans. And let's kick this off since we were going to give you the scoop on Little Miss Diva Fani Willis.
oh
Uh,
yeah,
Last year, I filed, I think it was in the March timeframe, I filed an open records request asking for a list of federal grants that Fanny's office has received. And they have, I think it's 3 days, right, Jared?
yeah, that's
Fanny
right.
had 3 days, her office had 3 days to respond to my request or to let me know why they needed more time. They never responded.
Right.
Uh, a month went by and they still didn't respond. So I reached out to Jared and Stan Fitzgerald with Veterans for America First, and they were instrumental in actually filing, and Jared did that, filed a writ of mandamus to compel Fanny is the district attorney, and she is tasked with upholding the law. And what she does, she frequently ignores the law, and she has an attitude that she's above the law. But Jared, tell our listeners what happened when you filed the writ of mandamus.
All right. So what I did is I filed the writ of mandamus because she hadn't followed the procedure and protocol for disclosing which documents she has, or the difficulty she'll have in completing the gathering, or otherwise to calculate a reasonable expense for doing so. And if you don't do any of that, you're just basically ignoring the request. Now, public documents were intended to be available to the public. Georgia is very serious and straightforward about that. And you're right that Fani Willis is, I believe, in the perspective that she doesn't have to follow the laws. And she has been recently hit with violations of the Open Records Act, and she's still defiant. She's defiant against Jim Jordan, where he had to come out and say, look, on this date certain at 5 p.m., you give us that information, or we're going to go further, telling him that it's not his job on the Judiciary Committee to investigate crimes concerning the election, which is completely absurd. Uh, the Fulton County judges, from practicing in Georgia, I don't want to badmouth anybody, but I have to commend Judge Robert McBurney, who finally held Fani Willis's feet to the fire and said, you violated Judicial Watch's open records request. Judicial Watch, they were seeking information concerning communication between the DA's office and the White House, the DOJ, just figuring out what's the federal to state communication. And she's adamant that she doesn't have to give that information. And now it just makes us really hungry to see what's in there, because we know there's something to hide if she's trying so hard to hide it.
I agree. And here's something else I did as well. And I never went any further with it because I felt like it was a lost cause. In August of last year, I filed an open records request, essentially asking for a lot of the same things that Tom Fitton with Judicial Watch requested. I asked for travel records, the money, travel records to Washington, D.C., or any place she went out of state. I asked for any money that was spent on the Trump prosecution. I asked for the backlog of cases she had because of, people were sitting in jail because she was focused on the YSL rapper trial and focused on going after a witch hunt, politically motivated witch hunt, going after Donald Trump and some of Trump's allies and alternate electors. And I requested information like that I knew her office would have. So I think I filed it in August. And like a month later, I still, because it was a big list I requested, a lot of the same things that Judicial Watch won a lawsuit for. And so I waited a month, and I guess it was about 3 weeks, and I said, hey, you were supposed to turn this over to me within so many days. I haven't heard anything back. And then I got a response back saying, we require 30 days to provide you with all the documentation. I said, okay, 30 working days. And this was towards the end of August. And in October, I haven't heard a word. 30 days had long since been, had gone by. And so I responded. I said, look, I gave you, it's been more than 30 working days. Where's my information? If I don't hear back, I'll file a second writ of mandamus with Fulton County Court because you have failed to follow open request laws. I got a response back the next day, and it said, oh, we don't have the information you requested. And
Right,
how
right.
stupid is it that, and this is why she's withholding it, deliberately keeping it secret that the public should know, and she's violating the law. And she was like, oh, well, we don't have it. Well, why? I asked them, why did you ask for 30 days in
Right.
August if you knew? I mean, you had to have the documents that exist, or you would have just responded back, we don't have the documents, instead of asking for 30 days.
Oh, and Debbie, I forgot to mention what happened with the case that I filed for you. And the writ of mandamus, their response was they had already sent us the documents in their possession, which turned out to be just scrambled garbage. And
Right,
the follow up was, we're not under any duty to create additional documents, even though they have the information that would illustrate the travel logs, the expenses. But the thing that really burned them recently was Nathan Wade. Well, not recently. The first break in this chain of information to show that there is more to be discovered is Nathan Wade attempted to get reimbursements from the White House for his travels back and forth from the Fulton County DA's office related to the prosecution of Donald Trump. If he's so sloppy and stupid to think that that wouldn't create a paper trail, he's an idiot, or he's setting somebody else up. Um, but I wanted to explain a little bit about the normal interaction between the Department of Justice, the White House, and state level DAs. It's not uncommon for the Department of Justice and state level prosecutors, including the DA's office of Fulton County, to coordinate prosecutions when they're both criminally charging the same individual, so they can avoid any double jeopardy or any other strategic purposes to maximize conviction, sadly enough. But when the federal government is not prosecuting the same individual as the state actor, then there should be no coordination. And there's a firewall built between the White House and the Department of Justice. Now, the reason why it's a big gotcha moment with finding that Nathan Wade has now admitted twice that there's been coordination is because who they were investigating and who they were prosecuting was President Trump, and they were getting their marching orders from the White House. That violates their oath of office, that they are supposed to conduct their business officially without favor, fear, or bias. And what is more bias than having your political opponent playing puppet strings from the White House and the DOJ controlling the prosecution in Fulton County Superior Court? So that's the real gotcha thing. And I don't think she's got a good explanation as to why she was entitled to do that.
Oh, I agree. I think Stan Fitzgerald would like to say, add a little bit to this.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm going to break the train of the conversation just for a minute. I'm the Georgia State Chapter Political Director. And I just want to point out, I want to thank Rusty and Chris and Disturbed and Pamela and Beatrix for joining our pop-up spaces tonight. We're going to have these every week. You might have missed the beginning. Debbie Dooley, the host, you're blessed to be listening to one of the founders of the Tea Party, and Jared Craig, the attorney who's been speaking. Both these people are too humble to tell you about themselves. Jared was the lawyer for the RNC and Trump campaign here in Georgia and was on staff for the election challenges that night. Unfortunately, we didn't have to do that in Georgia. And one of our national team members is on, and she'll speak a little bit later. She's a sitting GOP committee woman in Miami, and that's Christy Tasker. So I just wanted to introduce who these people were you were listening to. And our Georgia team has three very high-profile veterans on the Georgia team. All three were unable to make it tonight, but Debbie and Jared and Christy will give you a great show. So thank you all for
Well,
listening.
thank you. And Christy is phenomenal. She's in Florida. And then Veterans for America First has a great team. And there's a lot of things that people don't see that goes on behind the scenes, like in regard, like a lot of folks did not realize what we were discussing about last year. Fani Willis defiantly breaking the open records request and not turning over documents that she should have. And we fought back. And I'm glad to see that Judicial Watch is actually took her to court and won a court battle. So she has 5 days to turn the documents over. A district attorney in Georgia. By the way, I also filed an ethics complaint against Fani last year as well. Of course, I haven't heard anything back, but we have seen a former president of the United States be targeted with politically motivated witch hunt in order to prevent him from returning to the White House. They bought up, oh, J6, J6, J6. I mean, it was crazy. As Stan mentioned, I'm one of the 22 national co-founders of the Tea Party movement that began in 2009. We helped plan, and I used to be state director for FreedomWorks before I co-founded. I came on board. I served on the board of Tea Party Patriots for over 10 years. Um, helped organize the 9/12/2009 March on DC. And by the way, we had more people than attended J6. And when we left that place, we were there, we were peaceful, there were no garbage left. We left the place clean. And it was very peaceful.
You probably have fewer FBI agents in your crowd.
Yeah, they were infiltrated. Well, we also, I mean, we actually got a permit and told them we were going to do a march, and the organizers of J6 were not honest, according to text messages, were not honest with the Park Service. And they were telling the Park Service there will be no march, while at the same time they were planning one, and the permit said no organized march allowed. So it was kind of with the infiltrators, people trying to disgrace Trump, and with the fact that there was definitely, I've got a copy of the permit, and the organizers did not have a permit to march to the Capitol. So you combine all the infiltrators and all, that were attended and all that, it was just like a pot, like a pressure cooker that's about to reach the limit and it's going to boil over. And that's what happened. Uh, Donald Trump, we all stood, everybody on this call stood by Donald Trump. We defended Donald Trump. I was actually attended a little rally when he was going to turn himself into the Fulton County Jail. And we've all backed Donald Trump very strongly and defended him. People said, including Mitt Romney said, oh, he can't be elected and all of this. Guess what Mitt Romney had to admit? That Trump won. Basically, his agenda's working. He's smart. And Mitt Romney went from trashing Trump to praising what he did. And he said that the Republican Party was now Trump's.
Yep.
And,
Well,
and,
good.
and that was it.
Well, when we have prosecutors who have taken oaths, they're public servants, not public dictators. They're
Right.
not monarchs. And the problem is, from working from the inside as an attorney, prosecutors don't have a client. Their client is the people at large,
Right.
all of the society of the jurisdiction in which they practice. So they don't have a whole lot of oversight, which means that we should elect DAs that have integrity, a core sense of doing what's right versus wrong, and exercising discretion without political um, considerations. Because once you do that, we have lost our sense of America, the beautiful. It's turned into America, the eroding, ugly dictatorship from unelected, faceless bureaucrats. That's probably not a succinct way to say it. But, Fani is also in a little hot water with the Judiciary Committee, the House Judiciary Committee with Jim Jordan. There was a deadline at 5 p.m. December 9th where Fani Willis was supposed to have disclosed documents to the House Judiciary Committee, and she failed to do that. And not only is she being cavalier, just not giving it, she's telling Jim Jordan that he's overstepping his authority to interfere with her prosecution. And I think she's forgetting that she's admitted several times in her defense of the relationship with Nathan Wade that she misappropriated campaign funds. I don't know if you remember, but she was talking about how
Yep.
she had a lot of cash on hand, right?
Yep.
And that she reimbursed Nathan Wade from cash that she held at the house. And when she was asked, well, do you normally keep that amount of cash? Well, she flip-flopped and talked about her daddy telling her that she needed to keep cash for whatever reason, and made it some sort of sidestep. And then, almost as a parenthetical or a footnote that she was trying to throw in, she admitted that this was cash she had left over from a campaign. The average person might not realize this, but you're not supposed to have a whole lot of cash from a campaign, much less paying back your boyfriend or your what do you
Boy toy.
the boy toy, paying him back for rendezvous and cruises and wine tastings. Even if that were to be tracked money from the campaign, that's not proper spending. So I think she's a little over her head in the hot water here. And I don't see her getting too much further in her political career or in her legal career, because the headlines are all coming out, even on liberal media. Oh, this is her last case, her final mistake, and she's spiraling downward, and critical errors. And we've been saying this the whole time. These cases, this is the only one left, but these cases against Donald Trump were never to win. And anyone who's followed the law or gone to law school or been involved in litigation, you don't really set up a case for political purposes. You're going to lose that way, and you shouldn't set up a case that you're certain to lose. And we saw some of this discretion exercised even by Jack Smith recently by shooting down all the federal cases. Letitia James, shutting that down. Alvin Bragg, shutting that down. And this is the last, what I consider the last BS prosecution or persecution that we have to deal with. And I think that she still thinks that this is going to put a feather in her cap, that this is going to be a thing for her resume that's going to help her, but only if she goes back to California, because I think she has burnt her name here.
Oh, yeah, and I looked for, she made grand promises to the left. I'm getting Donald Trump. I indicted him. It was like a kangaroo court, that grand jury. And she's made nothing but grand excuses on why she wasn't successful. Look for them to throw her to the wolves, and that's what she deserves. She went from the top of the heap to the gutter in very, very short time, and it was well deserved. Now, Christy, you want to speak now? Christy,
Yes, I am hearing, and I am
introduce yourself. You're
yes. My
great.
name is Christy. My name is Christy Reeves Tasker. I'm the sitting committee woman for District 17 in Miami, and I've also been a huge part of Election Brigade, along with Betty, who is on the call, Pamela, um, and Lucretia, and a whole bunch of other. And I Disturbed Mama Bear, she's on. And we've known for since 2020 that the Georgia election was stolen. We've watched Franny Willis come down to Miami with all of her money. And by the way, there was basically nobody at her Miami party. Imagine that. And as an investigative journalist in Miami, I'm also looking for a connection between her and P. Diddy, believe it or not, because we already know that one of the candidates that actually we reported, Election Brigade received several reports of election malfeasance in Miami that sounds similar to Georgia, believe it or not, where we had the election board itself reporting things in districts. Well, conveniently, those are the districts that are still left blue. Imagine that. By the same candidates that are supported by P. Diddy. And I don't mean to get off from the Georgia elections, but I'm just saying
But
we
that's
see
okay. Go
we
ahead,
see some of the
discuss
same things.
Florida.
You can't even make this stuff up. I mean, really, I actually sent a message today to one of the whistleblowers saying that this sounds like a made-for-movie TV. It's better than a Lifetime movie. Asking them, just to come forward and tell the story themselves instead of me telling it, because they experienced it firsthand, and it does sound like something that ought not be true, but it actually is, and we have to stand up for it. And the people that have been here are often, I will say this, we're the first ones attacked by the communists that don't want you to say anything, that bought the land from Brian Kemp in Georgia. But conveniently, what they didn't know is we had a ton of veterans, and we have a ton of people on all sides of the aisle working together to make sure that elections are not stolen. And Libertarian Party, the Green Party, you know, and there's even some, I'll say, good Democrats, that
Yep.
that have tried to blow the whistle on these people and say, something about this is just not right, you know. And many of those people have actually switched to the party. They're called names for switching, and it's like, what do we want here? Do we want conservatives, or do we want to hold on to conservative values, or do you want to hang on to your GOP, which is run like a private club in Miami, which we all saw we see on a daily basis, them trying to hold on and clinch to power. Well, that's not going to work for too long in terms of, self-serving parties as a whole, because people can see right through it. They're exposing themselves left, right, and center. And people like Fani Willis, the president knows that, the president knows exactly who these people are. And now that he has won the election, I suspect on January the 21st, there will be a new list released from Mar-a-Lago banning a bunch of people, or at least that's my hope.
Oh, I do too. And in Georgia, believe it or not, we actually had Democrats that worked with Republicans, folks like me, to get rid of the Dominion voting machines. We worked
Oh, yeah.
together on rules for the rule change. With the state election board, actually had a Democrat chair that came out in favor of the rules. Uh, and it was Democrats in Georgia that tried to warn us about Dominion voting machines. It was Democrats that warned us, that filed a lawsuit to prevent Georgia from deploying Dominion. Go ahead and finish, Christy. I just thought it was interesting that we both had bipartisan efforts in Georgia and Florida. Christy?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so we had to have bipartisan efforts in both states, because we knew that there was such a divide. We had I'll call it a communist infiltration, because that's what it was. And in terms of divide and conquer, from the time President Trump started running in 2020, President Trump did one of the most brilliant things that I've seen him do, that a lot of people did not pay attention to. I want to say it was around November the 8th or 9th. There was the presidential, what am I even trying to say? The presidential debate, sorry, that was held in Miami. And instead of participating in that debate, President Trump held a rally the very same night, the very same time. Okay. So you can imagine what that exposed. Holding a rally the very same time that you have 10 other candidates, I want to say, including Vivek, Governor DeSantis, Nikki Haley, who, believe it or not, some of the Miami GOP were just flocking to Nikki Haley. And I mean, it was like one of the most shocking things I think I've ever seen. So I arrive at the rally, and first of all, at the rallies, there's many times that, I'm supposed to be on multiple lists, but, they try to strike me from other lists as if, I'm not on a list and haven't been on a list. So that's one of the things that has been watched. And, listen, it's too late for these people now, so I can say this, but they vacated President Trump's rally to go to the presidential debates. So when that happened, and people just didn't show up, they tried to leave vacant seats. Well, we all know what CNN did with vacant seats at rallies or the areas behind President Trump. So a lot of times I would go into the different rallies, and not only were a lot of the GOP not even knowing or having the opportunity to volunteer. So in other words, Republicans were never told, hey, President Trump needs volunteers to sign people in. They were never told these things. Okay. So it's not that we don't have a lot of good Republicans that would have worked for him. They just weren't made aware, because I believe, it's still my belief, that many of the GOP leaders were trying to set President Trump up for failure. So the night of the presidential debate, while President Trump was having his rally, well, guess where a lot of the GOP leadership was? You can guess, up the rears of everybody else. Well, what was really funny is they didn't know the very next day that Vivek and Steve Bovo were joining forces for Cafecito the next morning to inaugurate President Donald J. Trump's Boulevard in Hialeah. So, at that point, it still didn't wake, some people up. Let's just say they still, were like, oh, we're gonna go for, one of the other candidates, even Vivek. And I'm like, guys, it's obvious Vivek knows, like, he's for Trump. Hello, like, wake up. And they still, so that's the type of mentality that we're dealing with from the Republican Party itself. So if they don't get it, who will? So there was a bunch of us that ran for change in our own Republican Party because we had to reclaim that, because we had a lot of people who were being very self-serving inside. So that is one of the grassroots things that we were able to do, and make sure that we can reclaim our party from within to get our Republican values back.
Do you know Michael Thompson? Lee
Yeah.
County?
I don't, that not off the top of my head. I might know if I saw a face.
Well, you kind of both are kindred spirits in fighting against the status quo. I think he stepped down as Lee County Republican chair so he could fight for conservative values. But his name is Michael Thompson, and you guys should meet or get together because y'all both are kindred spirits. And I
would love that. Absolutely. And Debbie, my mom actually worked with you or came with one of the Georgia candidates years ago, Jeff Fincher.
Oh, yeah.
Kathy and Jeff Fincher to the Tea Party.
Oh, yeah.
I think downtown Atlanta. This has been years ago.
2009.
You can remember me, and I love it when
yeah.
you and my mom can both remember, and I have no idea what year it was.
Probably the big one, April 15th, 2009. We were expecting, maybe 1,000. Then Sean Hannity decided he was coming and bring John Rich. We even had Joe the Plumber. And we had a great crowd. We had over 20,000 people at the Georgia Capitol. And
oh my goodness.
Oh, it was incredible. We had Neil Cavuto come the next year. And I'm going to get Lucretia, you are next. And Christy, I hope you can be on every Monday too,
I will try to be. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We'd love to have you.
And Lucretia, you want to introduce your title? Lucretia is the Georgia Comms Director for Veterans for America First. She's a longtime activist that fights with her heart, and she never quits. She's like the Energizer Bunny.
Well, thank you, Debbie. Hey, everybody. Hey, Christy. Hey, everybody that's on here. Like I said, a lot of people don't know there was 44 people that stood up in November of 2020 to actually petition a federal grand jury about Fulton County and what was going on at Fulton County. And Dave and myself was number 1 and number 2. And rest Paul Nally's soul, because he just passed away. But, fighting for election integrity and learning about the court system, I have to say that was Judge Paul Nally at one time. Now, when it comes to Christy and in Florida, Michael from Lee County, I just want to get in where we actually fits in and be able to actually expand Veterans for America First. But when it comes to Fannie Mae Willis and Nathan Wade, Jocelyn Wade, the court case, ask me. I recorded it and I could probably tell you everything that Jared is saying, the $50,000, the trips and everything else, Georgia citizens being out almost $1 million to her lover. It was all set up by the Jack Smith. Both Fannie Willis decided that she was going to campaign just like Leticia James. But you got to think, it could not happen unless we had a corrupt Secretary of State to begin with.
Bingo.
Exactly. I agree with that.
So once we get our Secretary of State back and actually go in there and look at what they signed, because this compromise that the Republican Party inside of Georgia did with the Senatorial Committee of the Democrats, I don't appreciate and like. And it just seemed like the Republicans and the Democrats at the top, the pencil pushers, are getting in bed with each other, and they are really neglecting America First, Georgia First, or just Americans, period, at this point.
Oh, I agree, and they definitely are. And you have been a force. I mean, you are incredible, Dr. Nally. I was heartbroken to hear of his death. He was a fighter that was sacrificed uh, to advance liberty, and he's going to be missed. And
Yes, he is.
and
But you know what? He taught us all. He taught us to continue to get out there and fight. And now we got a Jared. We got Jared on our side. So when it comes to the legal dealing, I know he can pinpoint us the right direction. I just feel like all of us and with our background, and we're just going to continue. I love the America First agenda, and I don't see anything wrong with us continue focusing on America First agendas, focusing on the veterans, focusing on the election integrity and everything else.
well, and here's something to keep in mind is that our fight's just beginning. People, were like, oh, we can relax. We elected Trump. No, we can't relax because you have rhinos in the party that are going to, like the Mitt Romneys, that are sucking up to Trump and it's going to be a constant fight because they're going to be trying to co-opt Trump. So it's up to the grassroots to say, hey, we support this policy and don't be co-opted by these dubious folks that all of a
Well, you
sudden.
got 4 class of Republican brand that you need to pay attention to. You got the Never Trumpers,
Yep.
which are the followers of the rhinos. The rhinos are the followers of the neocons, and the neocons are the followers of the globalists. So you have 4 separate parties, and then you have the grassroots, but we don't matter because they don't care about us anyway. So you got to be really cautious because you got the Never Trumpers, you got the rhinos, you got the neocons, and you got the globalists. So we have 4 factions within inside the Republican Party trying to tear it down from within.
Well, one thing that I think some of these. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say one thing that I will say that these political prosecutions have done is it's created a precedent for the future. If they try this shit again, pardon my French, we're going to stop them in their tracks because we see what they've tried to do with Trump. We know how they did it. We see what they're trying to do just for the purposes of winning an election. We can get out in front of it. And even though I would say he's the sacrificial lamb for this horrible procedure, in the law, we're actually creating a little precedence so they can't do this again because they've all failed. And the lingering case, the last lingering thing is this Fani Willis obstruction. Was the RICO case for election interference. But it's dying too. It has no legs to it. So that's one thing I was going to try to find a silver lining in all this prosecution that turned up fruitless, is that it didn't go the other way, where we had sitting president or sitting candidate nominee who is having to fight for his job, for his life, for his family. And I don't know anyone else that could have stood up to so much adversarial power and pressure against him.
And Lucretia and Rusty, you're going to be next. But Lucretia, you mentioned the Secretary of State's office.
Yes.
The real problem with the Secretary of State's office is Gabriel Sterling. He's
just a mouthpiece. He's just a mouthpiece. But when you really go back and look at the history of the Secretary of State, you're going to have to literally blame Kathy Cox. Once you blame Kathy Cox, you got to blame Brian Kemp, because that's when this problems really started with the lawsuits. After Brian Kemp, you bring in Brad Raffensperger, and then you got his little lackey, Gabriel Sterling. Now, the next problem that you're going to have in the state of Georgia is you got 3 rhinos trying to jockey for the governor, because the governor is going to run off ass off. He's running against ass off. We already know that. So they kind of leave a gaping hole in Secretary of State. So they're playing musical chairs inside the state of Georgia. Some of the people that's on the executive committee board that we know of is switching over and now getting ready to run for Secretary of State. Brad Raffensperger is getting ready to run for governor along with Chris Cox and Burt Jones. So we are up a creek unless we get some really great people in there to primary those people.
Well, I think Burt Jones is doing a good job. He's a hardcore Trumper. And he is definitely doing a good job. And let's not forget that Burt Jones was actually one of the people, one of the state senators that had their committee assignments stripped by Jeff Duncan because they tried to get to the bottom of what happened in 2020. And Burt
No, he got Ralston-fied. He got Ralston-fied. That's what all elected officials, they get down there and try to do the right thing. And they get Ralston-fied. And basically, they become the chairperson of the senatorial committee. So if you buck the system inside of the state of Georgia,
Yep.
you are not going to get any power. And if you decide to get power, they're just going to sit you down. So if you have a little bit power and you are in favor with them, I don't like you because you have compromised. So me personally, being a grassroots person, we need to shake up the game a little bit, and we need some really great candidates that's up there and stop playing musical chairs.
Oh, I know, and I think Trump will endorse Burt. He's close to him, but Burt had his committee assignment removed, stripped by Jeff Duncan. So he was one of the ones that sacrificed. But let me give you a tip on who's running for Secretary of State in 2026. Gabe Sterling is.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, he is. Hell no. That was my thing when somebody told me, but I have it on there's a whistleblower. That's all I'm going to say inside the SOS office. And I have it on really, really good authority that he's been telling people he's running for Secretary of State. So we need to make sure little gay boy, I call him Pillsbury Doughboy, is sent packing and that he loses. And I'm going to bring, you can stay on, Lucretia, too.
Absolutely.
And anybody else that was a speaker, if you want to chime in, just chime in. But we'll go to Rusty, you're next.
Good afternoon. This is a great space, you guys. Retweet the space. We should definitely have a lot more people in here than this. But Miss Christie, when you were speaking, I got a phone call, so I missed part of it. And you had said that you or somebody was looking for connections between Fani and P. Diddy. But I missed why you thought there may be a connection there. Can you repeat that, or did I misunderstand?
Christy?
Guess that explains why he bought so much lube.
I don't know. That was just really interesting, and I wasn't sure if I had missed that connection there.
Well, I think Christy I think she has to unmute herself because she's still listed as a speaker. But she has to unmute herself. Christy, are you still with us? Okay.
Well, while we're waiting on Christy, I was going to connect us back over to the Fani Willis issue. Burt Jones was also under investigation as part of the 19 with Trump. And Burt Jones was actually running against a candidate for lieutenant governor from the Democratic Party. And Fani Willis appeared at that fundraiser at her house and said she was going to get Trump, she was going to get Burt Jones, she was going to get all the other 18 defendants. And in that case, because Fani Willis and the opponent were direct campaign opponents from Burt Jones in the lieutenant governor race, she was precluded from prosecuting Burt Jones. But that same leniency or deference was not given by the same Fulton County judges to President Trump and the 18 other defendants. And that didn't make the news a lot, but I was just going to bring that back as Fani struck out already once with Burt Jones. She's striking out with Donald Trump. And I think she's only gotten a couple of plea deals that are subject to retraction. So,
Yeah, and don't forget her big case that she had two big cases, Trump case and the YSL thug case.
right.
And I mean, there was so much prosecutorial conduct with her office, and the fact with the judge, they ended up having the judge bring another judge in because representatives from the DA's office and the judge met with one of the defendants and tried to get him to flip. It was an
Right.
illegal meeting and it was all called out.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah.
so Fanny's not doing too good. But when we stand and fight, sometimes we have to, just like with Donald Trump, he lost 2020. Well, he didn't lose. It was stolen. In 2020, people called him dead, said, oh, his political career is dead. And he came back with a resounding mandate. But like I said, you're going to have people come in that try to co-opt, try to influence him. So that's where we come in and we say, defend him and things like that, and make sure those dubious characters aren't in his, in his orbit, inner circle orbit that can influence him, because they're going to try. You see Mittens Romney, what he said.
Oh, yeah. And, also a comparison from the first administration and the second is the overwhelming increase in support from the U.S. Senate and U.S. House. I believe the number in the first administration was somewhere around 14 to 15% at most, whereas now we have closer to 60, 75% of support for Donald Trump's policies, which we hope to have less bureaucrats. We hope to have less rhinos and those that just want to get in and intervene or stop or slow roll documents. You know how it doesn't take long for someone to lose something, especially when it's urgent.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's going to be less of that going on.
Well, one of the best things, any of the speakers or anybody wants to speak, raise your hand, but you can just chime in. But one of the things I think would have an impact, and I heard Brian Jack speak about this at an event, I think it was in Peachtree City, or Fayetteville, when
I was probably at both of those.
well, he talked about, if you really want to change, move some of the federal agencies out of the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia job pool.
Oh, yeah.
Move them out because, you got to look at the job pool in Washington, D.C. It's surrounding areas predominantly Democrat. So let's start talking about moving some of these federal agencies out of the Washington, D.C. area and other areas, because a lot of these people that have jobs now, they're not going to leave their Washington, D.C. area to move to a place like Florida
Also,
or
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma or Montana
Oh, yeah.
or any of that. Yeah, I'm a big Yellowstone fan, so that's why I mentioned Montana. Moving those rural areas, they're not going to want to do that. So there's a lot of things that can be done and can be changed. And Donald Trump deserves to get his nominees through.
Yeah, I think those that are still holding on to trying to fight, the governors of the blue states and the sanctuary city mayors and, Fani Willis, those of like mind, they're grasping at straws because they don't have any fallback plan. It's kind of like the Hillary voters who totally melted down because they thought Hillary was going to beat Donald Trump, and they had no fallback plan. I guess they started making weird hats and walking around D.C., but I digress. But they don't have anything to hold on to except resist, resist, resist. And if we go through and clean house, they can sit at home and resist themselves if they have the power to do that.
Oh, I agree. And, it's funny to watch people like Van Jones actually talk about how smart, admonish the left and Democrats about their talking points about Donald Trump. It sent shockwaves through the Democrat Party, and also, let's be honest, through the Never Trumpers in the Republican Party. They're sitting back and they're like, oh my God, he won the popular vote. Demographics have began to slowly, go to the Democrat Party. You have a lot of black, especially black men. You had Hispanic voters. And, this whole thing with illegal immigration, it backfired. I mean, when you have people in Chicago, a Democrat stronghold, blasting the Biden administrations because of illegal immigration.
Yep.
And I heard Tom Homan said that's where he's going to start. We've got 7 more minutes. This is next Monday night will be a little bit longer, but this was our initial X, or I still call it Twitter, X Spaces. And so if you want to speak, go ahead and the speakers unmute yourself if you want to say a few more words.
Or if you have any questions, whatever, keep an open forum, I guess.
I still want to know about that P. Diddy Fani connection if Christy's listening. I was like, what? I had not even heard that.
Well, I know she went out to California.
What is it? Oh, we're talking about Franny Willis and P. Diddy?
Yes, ma'am. You had made some kind of comment, and then I got a phone call, so I didn't hear it, and I was like, what is the connection?
Well, okay, so here's what we're researching. Jesus Navarro, you can go on his page, Jesus G. Navarro. He ran for Congress against not Franny Willis, but Federico Wilson. Federico Wilson was endorsed by P. Diddy. Okay, Miami-Dade County was all red. Okay, so in other words, it has not been red since the 1988 Reagan election. Don't quote me on numbers for sure, but since the Reagan election, Miami-Dade County has not voted for a Republican president since Reagan. Okay, so and everybody in the down ballot that had any had anybody running against them that was Republican won, except for Jesus G. Navarro, who is a very popular, great Republican, real America first, has met with Trump, and he lost his election. I think he got about 34% of the vote against Frederico Wilson. Okay, so Frederico Wilson was endorsed by P. Diddy as pro-Iran, and conveniently, about a week before the election, she receives an award from City of Miami. Well, guess who's City of Miami? There are 3 notable Republicans in City of Miami and 2 Democrats. So go figure. So I am now looking for a connection between, and I always throw things like this out, okay, between P. Diddy and Franny herself, because why did she come to Miami to throw a party, and where did she go for the after party? See, these are questions we have to ask, because we know nobody came to the party, but what we all know is they go and they have these grotesque, I won't even say it here because I'm sitting in front of my grandmother, but they hold the most disgusting parties of all mankind. And we now know that women and men both are coming forward with over 120 lawsuits have been filed against P. Diddy himself. with many other celebrities coming forth. So I'm looking for, where did she go? What did she do? I know there's somebody out there that knows, and, and I'll start to investigate it a little bit further. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And very interesting. Very interesting. It's all so
It's also
incestuous.
suspect. You can just say it's suspect.
Yes.
Look and see who P. Diddy bought his house from during COVID at top dollar. Okay. Why is that person sending me cease and desist letters?
Who did he purchase it from?
Gloria and Emilio Estefan sold P. Diddy
Oh,
his
yeah.
second home on Star Island.
Can I come? Yep.
Well,
Isn't that all really interesting?
I was going to say, how many of the people who were endorsing Kamala Harris that were not on there? I don't know if there was one person that was openly and loudly, celebrity wise, supporting Kamala Harris that wasn't on the P. Diddy list. It was almost laughable.
Right.
So I think it's a far stretch to think that someone that's colluding between the Biden-Harris White House in this election and during this prosecution, that she would get an invite to the party of heathens.
Right. And that's, and Jared, and it's 100% right. And fortunately, I have had clients that are in Hollywood and work on television sets, and I've seen how it all works, and seen the deals that they've tried to make, and if they didn't make them, they didn't get anywhere. And when you've seen that, you can't unsee it. And the reality is, it is all politically motivated, politically connected, through political influence. And the minute we all realize that, the better off we all are. Because you can't even make this stuff up. Literally, it's like a clown show, okay? Which you're just waiting for the next clown to come out. I'm actually, I should probably actually post the letter that I received from Emilio Estefan from Estefan Enterprises, threatening me with an article that I wrote regarding Police Jobs LLC. You can go and look that up on bananarepublicnews.com. And the one part that he says is incorrect in the article was that I named him as I believe I named him as co-founder when he's just the co-owner. Okay. But the reality is, he funds an organization called Only in Dade. His name is right there in plain sight on the Miami Herald. And he's never called Miami Herald and said, oh, we didn't, I don't want this article, it's untrue. No, he actually called the Herald out there, according to their journalist. But what they're not expecting is that any journalists are actually going to come along and connect the pieces, connect the dots, because a lot of the editors want to strike the connections. In other words, they want to even strike any parallels that, could be drawn, that even journalists themselves draw, because they're afraid of lawsuits. And when you're doing nothing but connecting public information, you can't be sued for defamation for something that's already out there, because it's his duty to fix things. For instance, if Emilio and Gloria Estefan did not buy planes for the Cuban spies, then you know what? They should sue Netflix for the WASP Network movie that claims that Gloria Estefan purchased the plane that one of the Cuban spies was flying over Cuba during the takeover, the Fidel takeover of Cuba. So, what is it? We can't have it both ways. Somewhere in the middle is the truth, I'm sure, and we just want to know what the truth is. But for some reason, people keep running from the truth, including P. Diddy. And there's, a lot of the people coming forward are putting together the pieces.
Well, and it's just so confusing too.
Yeah.
You almost feel like you need a map
What-
and those pins with the red. Because,
Yes.
like Lucretia was saying, it's not so black and white.
No.
That where you think, okay, it's Democrats versus Republicans.
No.
You've got the Republicans that's been like Brian Kemp.
Yep.
He could have stopped all this Fani stuff, and he didn't lift a finger to do it.
That's exactly
so they're
right.
like all webbed in there together, and it's so
Yeah.
hard to Make a list of them.
Or what about if you call a Republican, if you say like, oh well, that's not very Republican like, then you're not the good Republican because you didn't sit down and keep your mouth shut. You're supposed to protect the Republicans. No, you're supposed to go out and find a good Republican to run for office, support that Republican, get them in office so that you can have your freedom and you can have your government back, not so that we can sit around and pretend like the rhinos are Republicans when they're doing nothing but going and sleeping with the Democrats, and they're a house divided so that they can fool all of us simultaneously. And it's a very selfish thing that they do in general, that if they just remove themselves out for a second, they could probably see it. Such as Brian Kemp. I mean, duh, should we sell land to the Chinese Communist Party?
heck
No,
no.
we shouldn't.
Heck no.
Hello. Should we sell farmland to them? Do we want the Chinese growing our food? No, thanks. This is all common sense. Like, even the Chinese people will tell you that. I mean, the Chinese people are great people caught in a bad system. Okay. They want out of the system too, but they need us to stand up for our own land and for our own freedom, so that there may be hope for them, because without hope, we can all see where that gets us.
Yeah, and I can tell you, and keep in mind, Jay-Z and Beyonce are connected to all that. A lot of the dubious stuff went on. That P. Diddy did was he would have an annual party. It was called the White Party. You wore white and all that every year. And word is that Justin Bieber may have been one of his victims for that, his parties and things like that. I can tell you, one of the first things I hope Donald Trump does is order the release, total unredacted release of both the JFK files and the
Epstein Island. Yeah.
Epstein files. That's what we need. We need that. And Tom Homan's already said he's going to start the deportation in Chicago.
Well, and actually, the one thing that I wish he would do right away, to be really truthful, is I wish he would actually protect P. Diddy in jail, because I think P. Diddy is going to end up Epsteined. And because, I mean, we have even Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark, that says, he doesn't even believe, he was on a Patrick Bet-David show, if you want to watch it, saying that he doesn't even believe his own brother was ousted. Okay. Because nothing makes sense. Lies never make sense, everybody. And the reason I bring up this whole thing is because I could see this happening in Georgia way before, or really like in 2017, during the gubernatorial race, when you got to remember when what is the lady that ran against Kemp, that like they were trying to bake it out like they were going
Abrams.
Stacey Abrams, yes, when she was coming in with all the celebrity influence. So that's the reason we have to pay attention to the celebrities in general, because they are the ones trying to sway political influence. Okay. So it's not that, like you want to bring a big conspiracy theorist into it to try to figure it out. But fortunately, I do have some background in both, and I have a lot of background, even all the way back from really 2006, I want to say 2006, 2007 governor's race, when Casey Cagle, if you guys remember when Casey Cagle bowed out. Okay, well, Casey Cagle's son, Carter, was in school with my daughter at that time. So it's very, it's a very sad thing. You're kind of watching, but I even went back to see like who did get Casey Cagle out of the race. Because I mean, as far as I know, Casey Cagle was a really decent man. He was around, he was present. You could at least talk to him. You could reason with him. I felt like he, did the right thing on most occasions. I mean, listen, I don't, and this has been years ago. I mean, my views could have changed. But in terms of who was responsible, if you look, the same people that supported Kemp were against Casey Cagle. and those hindsight's always 2020, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because,
It,
nobody knew then. But you know what? So, they were trying to basically have him bow out because maybe they had honeypotted him at some point. Maybe he wasn't going along. I don't know. I have
yeah.
no, but
There's where there's smoke, there's fire in
I
regard
was going to
to.
say, at this point, I'm like, please, Casey, come back, or
Well,
somebody
Casey
step
would
up.
have been smart enough not to just throw Trump to the wolves like Brian Kemp did. And
Right,
a lot
right.
of us were fooled by Brian Kemp.
Yeah,
So, we were fooled because I endorsed him. I'm like, oh, look, he's doing good. Arranged for interviews with Breitbart
yeah,
for him. And it did not take them long to have their claws into Brian Kemp. That
yeah,
happened very, very quickly.
yeah.
And I think we're probably wrap this up. And next week we can stay on more if we need. But I encourage all of you, share it. This has been a great conversation. We've had great people on here. And, send Jared or I little emails and suggestions for the subject for next Monday at 7. And hopefully we'll have more people on there.
And I just want to say
But
thank you for everybody coming onto the show and listening. This is our first show on the Monday night hour at 7 o'clock. And, Make America Great Again was a campaign slogan, but now we're making America great again. Debbie was right. This is the start of the work that needs to be done. And the time frame is 2 years. We can go deeper into that next time, but we have the government. We have all three branches of the government, and we might as well do what we can while we have that.
I agree. And Merry Christmas to everyone. Um, and we will see you Monday, or I hope you're on here Monday and send us suggestions about some of the subject. We've had a great panel on here tonight. I just want to thank you. And the biggest thing to keep in mind, what Donald Trump, the election being stolen from Donald Trump, showed us is that you have to keep fighting. Don't run away. Don't run in a corner and lick your wounds. You're going to lose some. You're not going to win everything, and you have to stay in and keep fighting. And a piece of advice that someone gave me in 1980, and she was my political mentor. I lived in Alabama at the time. And she said, if you're engaged and involved in a project or anything like that, you don't worry if your adversaries attack you. You worry if they don't attack, because if they're not attacking you, then you're not a threat. They're only going to attack you if they view you as a threat. So keep that in mind. Don't get discouraged and fight, fight, fight. Thank you, everyone.